do you think that standardization is a good thing? Like, it can be used for good and bad? What's the balance of how we standardize it? It's a pretty hard question.
Well, I don't think I can answer it for simply because it depends on the situation.
Uh-huh.
But I think that there are often reasons to standardize that make a lot of sense, and there are sometimes reasons that don't. And really, well, I mean, I think English spelling is a perfect example because for years, for centuries, people have been advocating for different kinds of, let's simplify the spelling, let's do this and that. And George Bernard Shaw even gave, in his will, he gave money to somebody who could come up with a better, kind of system. And they published a book, one of his books or plays in that writing system, and gave it to all these libraries for free and stuff, trying to get people to use it. But I think the thing about that is, if we did standardize English spelling to a simpler phonetic version or whatever, first of all, it wouldn't be phonetic for every dialect, right? It would be phonetic for one or for two, especially the vowels are where you'd find the biggest differences, I would guess. And so it wouldn't be standard. But also we'd have millions and millions and millions of books that children or people who didn't know the system wouldn't be able to read anymore. So you'd have this very expensive process of converting every website, every book, everything into this new spelling system. So, I mean, I think it's one of those cases where people talk about doing these sorts of things, but you have to actually think about the implications. Yes. But, there have been examples of, I know Germany and Netherlands and other places, they have done various spelling reforms. First of all, they're dealing with smaller populations. But it's, the way that they roll it out, I think, makes a difference. But I think they're definitely, if you have, say, relics in your writing system or things like that just nobody understands anymore or nobody can really do anything with, then yeah, I'd say go ahead and standardize. But I think a lot of standardization, especially in this day and age, is sort of just going to happen organically over time because of things like the internet. So I think our spelling could, it has changed a bit already in the way that people spell when they text and that sort of thing. And we do have alternate spellings for certain words. But it also really depends on the type of standardization. I think this idea of having a pure dialect, a pure version of Portuguese or of Russian or of any other language, it's always going to be privileged. It's always going to be based on a certain group, and so it's not pure. Language isn't pure, right? Language is language. It's messy, and nobody pronounces sounds the same way every time they say them anyway. So I think that a lot of times, based on what I've seen at least and what I've studied, a lot of times when that sort of thing is done, it's really done for political purposes, not for linguistic purposes. Sure. And so then it's about motives. And then, if it is, we want to make it easier for the children to spell, well, that can be great. But if it's, we want everybody to do it this way because it's our way of controlling people, that's not so great. But there can be other types of, There's other types of standardization, I think, that are more neutral. But like I said, it just really depends on the case. I'm trying to think of some examples recent examples that are fairly,
recent examples.
Fairly benign, where nobody got hurt.
Norwegian bokmål, would that be one example?
Yeah, Norwegian is interesting with kind of written forms corresponding with groups of dialects, but there's I from what I understand, and I don't understand a lot, but there's still somewhat of a privileged form, over another. So,
well, and the other thing that happens a lot of times is if people are establishing their literary language, if they're that they're going to put in books and everything, they don't necessarily choose the dialect that people speak. They'll choose the dialect that is the most different from whatever language they're trying to distance themselves from. So geographically, they'll kind of go to the edge cases in many cases and try to find something where a speaker of that form would not be as mutually intelligible to a person who speaks the language that they're trying to say they're not a part of. So that can be a political reason as well. Right. When you look at what forms are chosen when people are forming a new language. So after World War II, for example, you had Macedonian, you had, and then Belarusian at various times they've had grammars and things written. And so a lot of it has to do with who who's doing the choosing and who they want to be like and who they don't want to be like.
Yeah.